Members, please can I remind you that this meeting is being webcast. Members, there's no fire alarm test this evening. Should the fire alarm sound, members will vacate the chamber via the fire exit to the rear and dissemble in the car park. And can I ask, as we move through the meeting, can I remind everyone present to turn off their microphones when they've finished speaking. I'd like to take the opportunity to welcome Levi White, Waste and Street Cleaning Manager, Steve Wilson, Operations Manager, who will be presenting this evening, and to Mr. Wrench, who will be providing information about the litter management activities undertaken by Great Bradford's Junior School. Thank you all for your attendance this evening, and we look forward to the presentation and finding out more about litter management activities. I shall now proceed with the business of the meeting. Agenda item 1, apologies for absence. Apologies have been received from Councillor Orr, Councillor McArdle, Councillor Mrs Sandham and Councillor Mrs Walters. Pecuniary interest or non-pecuniary interest that they wish to declare this evening. Please state the item and the nature of your interest.
None, Chairman.
And we don't need to declare that we know Mr Wrench. That's not...
No, Chairman, but for the
fine.
benefit of the public record, Mr Wrench, who's coming before the committee this evening, is also a district councillor. There is no personal interest in that matter. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Emma. If there are no other declarations, I will proceed to item 3, minutes of the previous meeting. Agenda item 3, minutes of the previous meeting. Please can I have a proposer to approve the minutes as an accurate record of the previous meeting of the Partnership Development Scrutiny Committee on the 28th of September 2022. No. Thank you, Councillor Abbott. Seconded. Thank you, Councillor Mrs Pell. The minutes have been moved and seconded as an accurate record. All those in favour, please indicate. Okay, thank you. Do we need to just record that Councillor Courtauld has joined us?
Yes, yes, Chairman, we've got that noted for you.
Thank you very much indeed. Right, so I'll just sign the minutes.
Chairman, if you just do the last page, that'll be sufficient.
Okay.
Thank you.
There we go. Thanks very much. Lovely. So we move on to agenda item 4, public question time. I can confirm there are no registered speakers for this evening's meeting. We can now proceed with agenda item 5, scrutiny review into litter management in the Braintree district, and this is our 3rd evidence gathering session. Members, this meeting marks the committee's 3rd evidence gathering session for the scrutiny review into litter management in the Braintree district. As mentioned previously, we have a few attendees joining us this evening. They are Levi White, Waste and Street Cleaning Manager, Steve Wilson, Operations Manager, and Mr Wrench, Head Teacher of Great Bradford's Junior School. To support members' evidence gathering for the scrutiny review, could I first ask Mr Wrench to introduce himself and to inform the committee about the litter management activities undertaken at Great Bradford's Junior. I'll invite members to ask their questions of Mr Wrench immediately after he's spoken, if that's okay.
Thank you, Chairman.
So please introduce yourself. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening, members. I'm Justin Wrench, the Head Teacher at Great Bradford's Junior School. It's a large free-form entry junior school with a maximum roll of 360 children, and the children who attend the school, just to give some context, age between 7 and 11 years old. We feel as a school the children are at the right age to begin exploring important issues which will not only impact themselves but also the community and also the wider planet as well. In our school, our code of conduct is set around 3 important values, which is firstly to be safe, to be kind and be responsible. And with regards to the issue of litter, we feel that littering is clearly not safe, particularly to wildlife, and the children are very passionate about that. It's unkind and leaves many issues for the people within our community, but also shows absolutely no responsibility, not only to themselves but also to the local community it impacts. So I'd just like to run for you a few important initiatives and projects that we do involve the issue of littering. So at our school, we have a committee called the Global Green Team. This is 12 children, year 5 children, aged between 9 and 10 years old, and they focus largely on eco and green improvements in the school. Part of their role is that they carry out regular litter picking across the school sites, and as a result of their tenacity, in previous years they have actually been supplied from Braintree District Council litter pickers, so that has helped them to be able to carry out that task. Although outside of the remit of this discussion, that committee has been really important to the school, ensuring that in 2020 we planted over 100 trees. We had solar panels fitted in 2021, and this summer we had over 350 lights fitted, LED lighting across the school. In year 4 particularly though, in their learning, we have a project that the children study, which is called Who is Responsible for Looking After Our Waste and Planet. The focus of this is the issue of litter and the impact it is having. The children have litter picked this whole school site, and they've gathered data, and I can show you just some examples of this from around many areas. So they've mapped out the school site, they've looked at where litter is collected around the school site, and then they've started to identify issues of why that litter is where it is, because our school actually sits quite significantly below the bottom of our estate, which is quite far below the line of the road. So a lot of litter that comes onto our school site actually blows off the road into the school. But one issue that the children have identified are the bins, believe it or not, that we have in school. So aside from not able to be able to sort recycling, which I feel is an issue as well, the children just have single-use bins that everything goes into. But however, the wind can often blow the content and not designed very well. The wind gets into the bin, blows it up, and our school site is pretty huge. It can get everywhere. So the children have looked in the ponds, they've found litter on the school field, we have multiple playgrounds, and in places where children very rarely, particularly during the winter months, have access to, litter will find itself absolutely everywhere. The children are very passionate about this. Although our bins are relatively modern and weighted, in high winds the children can fall over, the bins can fall over, and the litter clearly does spread. So part of the project, the children have used IT software called Tinkercad, and they've actually designed their own bins. Recently, we've invited the Cabinet Member for Environment to the school, and also the Chairman visited on that occasion as well. And the children had a debate about bins, litter, and issues around that project. Last year, actually, Levi White himself visited the school on behalf of Braintree District Council when we carried out this project, and they, as a memento and a token of the work, they actually provided the children with like pencil pot bins that just represented their project. However, the bigger issue is that we're still hoping to await some action of this. I received an update recently where, unfortunately, it falls outside the remit of Braintree District Council, because being a maintained school, it may fall under the remit of Essex County Council and their funding. Although the Cabinet Member for Environment is currently negotiating with some quite large companies locally that maybe some of their customers don't contribute very well to the littering, particularly along Galley's Corner, and so we're hoping that they may be able to sponsor some bins, not just for our school, because we know this is an issue in all schools locally. Whether or not they will do that, we're still going to be trying to find a solution to the problem that we have, because as we can all appreciate, school budgets are as tight as they've ever been. Education comes first and foremost, and bins can be quite expensive, and the sheer size of our site to replace all of the bins would come at quite a cost. So we're still seeking that solution. However, something else to point out, in the recent past, our Year 6 cohort also led a project against the use of single-use plastics and the impact that can have in the environment as well. The project itself actually involved the children not only writing to local companies, they actually wrote to quite large multinational companies as well. They wrote to their local MP, and he actually passed that information on to the Prime Minister at the time. not the current Prime Minister, as we know, this was a few years ago, but the children actually have got a response from the Prime Minister. It was actually passed on to a Minister for, if I just refer to it, the Department for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs as well, and the children got a response from the MP David Rutley, which they were thrilled about. Unfortunately, that issue is a global issue, and we know that, but the children have had responses from Colgate about the use of single-use plastics and the impact that their litter can be found globally and everywhere. But also some of the local companies they spoke to were Sainsbury's and also Costa Coffee as well. So it's important that their voice was heard. Actually, what was quite powerful is the project culminated in a whole school litter pick. So over a series of 2 weeks, every child in the school went out and they removed litter from the whole community. So local fields, local the river. We have the Blackwater Nature Reserve at the bottom of our estate, and we didn't actually get the opportunity to weigh the litter itself, but there was a significant amount of bags that were, again, to help with that initiative, high-vis jackets and the litter pickers for that occasion were loaned to us from Braintree District Council to help that initiative, which was really positive. And then a current project we've currently got, which is evolving in our Year 6 cohort, is a project, what does it take to transform? Because actually I think we'd all agree it's about changing habits, it's about making sure that people transform. So the children are learning. So not only are they studying about the impact of climate change, which is the core root of that, the children are looking at different biomes across the world and how climate change is affecting tundras, and how deforestation is impacting on the environment as a whole. However, their exhibition that they're holding in December, which we're hoping to invite members of this committee to, which I'll be able to pass on those details, will also have some artwork. And the artwork is inspired from an artist from America called Deborah Shapiro, and she focuses her artwork on collage. So the children will be using litter, they'll be using single-use plastics to form their collage, and they will be basing that on the issue of deforestation, on litter, and on some work that they've actually been studying around the melting permafrost within the Arctic. So it's important that they are able to present that. So that will be at the school next month. So as a school, we feel we've embedded what we can do within the curriculum. We're getting the children to lead on projects. And actually, although we look at other wider projects that focus on our community around the food bank, the environment and littering is at the core of that, because we know that if we can keep our school tidy, our community tidy, those children can make a big impact, and it's about what they can do in the future to avoid that becoming a problem as they grow older. So I'm more than happy to take any questions whatsoever, if there's any suggestions you may have, but more than happy to answer anything to do with what we're doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wrench, and for taking the time and trouble and bringing us so much information of what goes on at your school. If I can just kick off with a couple of questions. Maybe not a fair question. Do you think that is
global issues or environmental issues, but littering, absolutely. I think there's children within our school that I haven't mentioned, but they are Green Heart champions. That's not necessarily an initiative that we do as a school, but ultimately children are out and about in their free time litter picking as well. We can't necessarily take the credit for that, but children do their bit, and it's hard for me. Maybe yes, that's correct.
Do they do all the litter picking, or do they have
yes, that's correct.
Do they do all the litter picking, or do they have others come and help them?
So yes, they do ask other children to come and help them. They're the ones, the best way to describe them is they meet on a regular basis. They try and challenge us as a school by looking into ways that we can improve.
Great.
So in the early days, their job was to go round and bug the teachers at lunchtime to see if they were turning their lights off, and their interactive boards, for example, making sure that the projectors were turned off when they weren't using them. We've actually, as we've retrofitted our lighting, we have the sensors, so if the teacher walks out the room, the lights switch off. However, things like the board are still something that they're really keen on, that we're not wasting the electricity. So other children often, we have to cap it at a certain number. We have only a certain number of children, but that does refresh every year, just to clarify. So 12 children each year get elected onto that committee.
Oh, good. Thank you very much. So open it up to others. Councillor Abbott.
Thank you. Yeah, they're very, very interesting. Just by way of further information, I don't do so many now, but I've given talks to schools for decades on environmental issues, and I totally agree. Getting them young, so to speak, is so important, because once they've got into their teens and they're going to McDonald's, which I think you were alluding to, the trouble starts with the litter, and hopefully at primary school age they can be dissuaded. This time last year I gave a talk to Rain schools, so yes, many schools do similar things, and Rain definitely have been, and they sent me some lovely letters afterwards. They were really bugged about plastic waste in the oceans. That was the number one thing, but we also talked about littering. Your dilemma with the bins, just to say, at Rivenall Parish Council we had exactly the same things, and BDC very kindly and wonderfully replaced almost all our bins with lidded bins, because not only was the wind blowing rubbish out, but crows and similar birds, who are very clever, had worked out that if they could get in there and dig everything out, they could find food. So in the morning there'd be the circle of litter around the bins, even on calm days. But the question on the bins, rather than the supplement Branch District Council, that's the first avenue, but I think if we exhaust that opportunity, yeah, we will be looking down that line, because it's maybe forming something of a bigger picture, because I'd like to take it that one step further. I agree with the lidded bins, but the sorting for the recycling I think is just as important. The fact that you can imagine we alone have 360 children in our school, and a majority of the food, like food waste as an example, if they're eating healthy snacks, that goes in the same bin as some of the items that they could easily be recycling as well. But yeah, going to your point with grants, that would be something that we will be keen to explore, because we want to resolve the issue, and if we can't get that through council, we'd be looking to look into that. But if anybody has any suggestions of grants, we'd be more than happy to find out where would be the best place to start looking. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Hensman. Excuse me.
I think expanding on the grant side of things, and that is to work perhaps with the community groups, because community groups, where they're properly constituted, can access grants that, say, statutory bodies can't. And so in our case, I'm thinking of like the Braintree East or the Blackwater. There's a Friends of Blackwater, isn't there? And then what they could do is apply for the grants on your behalf and give you the bins, because it's the community that benefits at the end of the day. But I presume your waste, once it's disposed of, will go through a trade waste contract, and therefore the school is responsible for that, rather than having a freighter coming down as part of the domestic arrangements to take stuff, especially if it's recycled and so on. So it would be interested to know what your trade waste is, whether you've got DMR, dry mix recycling, and general refuse, or whether you've just got one big contract.
Yeah, I can give some information on that. So our trade waste is managed by Braintree District Council. Many schools do use Braintree District Council, although we don't have to. However, it is something that's another project that we've been working on, actually, about food waste. So when we looked into that, the charges for schools for food waste is quite significant. On top of, it's an extra payment that we have to pay to accommodate that, which again, I am aware that some schools do pay in for that, not all schools do. And so it is kind of looking at a package to be able to make it cost effective for schools in order to manage their waste, because we're treated ultimately as a business, although we are publicly funded, and so we have to be very careful about how we use our money. But yeah, you're correct. I think it is quite a large. We have to budget for that. We know year on year that service does, although it's competitive, we have to budget that the costs may increase. But yeah, it's a difficult one, because each extra element you add to recycling, for example, the more you want to be able to recycle, understandably, the more the costs do go up currently.
Another question, Andrew?
I was just going to expand on it because with my own thing is much cheaper than landfill, and it's trying to think creatively in that what I'm trying to look for is a partnership with the council at the schools.
Can I just say, Andrew, we're not here actually to solve the problem. We're actually trying to get some evidence gathering.
Yeah, but I'm not trying to solve the problem. I'm trying to find if there is an avenue that a recommendation could go in that the council could be creative in its partnership with the likes of the schools, because as Mr. Wrench says, it is, although it's treated as a business, it is publicly funded, and it's important to catch the children young. That if the ability to be able to manage the waste is caught young, they get into the habit. Do you see where I'm going?
Right.
So I'm not sure how to put it, but it's trying to see whether there's a potential for bins that can go into the schools to feed into the waste stream that's probably, I don't know.
I think at the moment you're trying to get to the conclusion while you're still on your journey. I think at the moment Mr. Wrench has explained the limitations to the school finances, that actually impacts upon what they can do within the school, within their own budgets. Mr. Wrench has also referred to initiatives where he's been able to borrow equipment from the district council to facilitate litter picking, and also around bins. So I think what you've had from the moment is a good explanation from Mr. as a head teacher as to how they're educating the children to be responsible towards waste, having a look at the bigger picture, and then how they feed into the district council in terms of accessing equipment to encourage activities within the school, within the curriculum, and to encourage good behaviours. If you're looking for a pathway as to how the district council can provide funding to fix specific issues, then that's something we'll need to explore slightly differently, because that's when you're looking to ask questions of Steve Wilson and Levi. This may be one of the things, the recommendations, is that actually the authority recognises the importance of these more discrete partnerships to encourage better litter management through culture and individual attitude changes. Certainly sort of picking up the point that Councillor Abbott's made with going into schools in rain, having that broader conversation, because one of the things within your terms of reference is how effective are our arrangements on our partnership working. Now, one of them maybe is that we've got a very good example where we've got one school engaged with the authority, but as Mr. Wrench has said, is he can't speak broadly across all schools in our district, and there's quite a few. And it may be that a recommendation that you put back is that is actually explored further to be part of the education, relationship with the district council and schools going forward. So we can't fix the problem today, but I think you've had a good presentation from Mr. Wrench to explain how his school has worked on their initiatives and engagement with the authority, but where there are some obvious issues where they are in need of assistance to continue that education message going forward. Is that roughly encapsulated it? Lovely. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any further questions? Councillor Courtauld.
Thank you. Justin, thank you for that lovely talk. I was just trying to think about litter picking separate from the sort of environmental panic that seems to have infected so many young people. And, we've always hated litter. I remember picking litter when I was 5, and I still pick litter sort of around my area. And the gang that do Coney Gain and the gang that do Pebmarsh, who all seem to be over 65, if not quite a lot over 65, seem to have great fun doing it. And they sort of triumphantly bring their sacks of litter and almost parade them past through the village. I was just thinking that the environmental thing, the environmental disasters and anxieties are so worrying, depressing, and litter picking is actually quite fun. Rather than fill the whole exercise with gloom, I mean, it sounds like your pupils are actually having a good time and they want to be on the global litter team or something. And separating the desperation. For instance, my wards are absolutely full of birds of prey. There are suddenly lots of otters. 10 years ago, there were no red kites, there were no buzzards, there were certainly no otters. This is something that perhaps we as a council could promote as a more cheerful side to environmental issues, because I talked to 3 schools last year. They weren't year 5, they were year 6, I think, so a little bit older. And they're scare stories about us living in a desert and everything else. I could see that they were actually genuinely terrified as children. Whether the council was encouraging that attitude or the media, and whether it's justified, the litter picking is actually good fun. Just like we never really boast about the otters on the cone or even the black water, as far as I can see. I think it's something that we as a council should promote as a sort of joyful, happy exercise, and we certainly should.
So, and it's looking at it from a balanced point of view, because I think, as you've said rightly, the media, and so within our curriculum we actually build it underpinned by concepts, and actually one of our concepts is media, and we look at the power and influence of the media, and the children will have access to the internet, and they will be able to find the answers themselves in that safe environment. And I think having those purposeful projects to design a bin and having people come in, as Councillor Abbott has said he has done, Councillor Hensman likewise, and yourself, I think it's important that it's seen to have a purpose. So what they're doing is trying to make an impact, but keeping it, we can always try and keep it around our local community. Although they see the wider issues in the world, it's what kind of positive impact they can have amongst.
Because this is a positive achievement, a positive debt. Removing litter is a good in itself, and they can actually do it. They can't necessarily stop China setting up a new coal-fired fire station every 3 hours or whatever it is. And so maybe we should, as a council, promote that. I mean, just because it's a good thing.
To join us this evening, putting on an excellent report from your school. It's greatly appreciated.
Chairman, if I may, Mr. Wrench, with your permission, obviously you've got your school children's documents there. Would it be permissible that you leave those in my custody so I can take copies, so we can show members the work and then return those to you safely? Because I think members would be keen to see the projects that the children have undertaken, to understand how they may wish to partner with schools and children as part of their education going forward.
Yeah, I can't see any problem with that. So yeah, more than happy to leave them here for you.
I'll ensure that they're kept very safely and returned to you at the earliest opportunity, if you're agreeable to that.
Yep. Yeah, that's absolutely fine.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Not a problem at all.
If you're able to provide those to me, then I'll make sure they're circulated to members so they get an understanding of the work for the children, etc.
Okay, that's fine.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Just one final thing. Quite often, after the meeting, there may be the odd question that comes up later. Are you happy if we wanted some further, we could email you and you able to give us a response?
Absolutely. More than happy as well. If any member would like to pay a visit to the school, talk to the children, I could facilitate that as well. So whatever is easier for yourself, I'm more than happy to help and accommodate in any way. Okay.
That's great. Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Wrench. You're more than welcome to stay, but quite understand that you have other things to do. So thank you once again. So we can, excuse me, we can now move the presentation that's been prepared this evening by Levi and Steve. And if I can invite members once again to ask questions after your presentation, that would be very helpful. So I don't know who wants to go first, but please go ahead. Thank you.
I don't know if it was from Mr. Wrench, because we would encourage all our schools that want our help, we would help as much as we can. And we certainly send out our back office team in recycling have done talks at different schools to encourage it. And I agree with Councillor Abbott in terms we've got to get them young to get this right.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to say that before I started. I've started on the first, just to remind members around our responsibilities, really. I know you all know this already, but as a principal litter authority, we have a statutory duty under the Environmental Protection Act to keep public maintainable highways and land for which we're directly responsible for to clear litter and refuse. And the guidance for that is set out in DEFRA's Code of Practice for litter and refuse. So it's I think anyone can download that off the net and things like that. I wanted to share with you what our structure is in street cleansing as well. Obviously, I've got Levi here, who's the waste and street cleansing manager. Facts around the street cleansing service. We have a controllable budget of 1.25 million, which is mainly broken down into staff and vehicles, although there is sum of money that's contributed to the street cleansing agreements that parish and town council, parish councils have. We supply to them as well. We have, as I said before, we have 28 staff. That includes the supervisor in that number, and we have 15 vehicles. So there's 5 sweepers. There's a couple of 7.5 tons, and then there's transits. Really, that's really what we've got. Move on to you, Levi.
Thanks for obviously the invite to the meeting, first one. So it's nice to meet many of you that I've not met before. So if we just move on to just a few bullet points in regards to the street cleansing primary functions within the service, obviously the core service that ultimately becomes my responsibility. So we have barrow beats that work predominantly around Halstead, Witham and Braintree, as they are the 3 high-profile main town centres that fall within the district. The job of the barrow beat, in essence or in high-level form, is he's on foot, he's patrolling, or she is patrolling around the town centres, the surrounding areas, the open spaces that fall under our jurisdiction. We have district-wide litter-picking crews as well. A roads team, for instance, that consists of 4 members of staff up and down several of the A roads that we know within the district, where we've got strategically placed litter bins and where we see a high level of litter that is dropped within the district. A couple of other teams included in that, although we label them as the Braintree and Witham teams, they're not secluded to those areas. They actually fall into the neighbouring areas as well and work predominantly outside of that. Across the district, as it stands at the moment, we are emptying 1,125 litter bins. The frequency of collection is purely dependent on several aspects. So we're looking at the area, the footfall, the usage, and we take all of those into consideration, and we also look at trends of complaints to ensure that we include we up the frequencies where required, etc. So it can be once a week, twice a week, 3 times a week, sometimes on collection. So although it may or may not sound like a lot of bins, due to the frequency, it's actually far more often that they get emptied rather than just that number. We provide a rapid response team, as we call them, which is to clear fly tips within the district. Predominantly and almost on, well, as far as I'm aware, all occasions is within 1 working day. It's a long list of and variation of materials that they collect on a daily basis, and obviously that's not in just one specific area, that can be across the entire district. Just following on to the next point, in terms of mechanical sweeping of curbs, channels including a quarterly sweep within the parish boundaries, The sweeper sizes differentiate, so we've got like a 4.5 tonne going up to an 18.3 tonne road sweeper. This gives us the flexibility we need to access all the areas that we need to maintain efficiency and effectiveness as best we can within the district. In addition to the 1,125 litter bins, we do also empty 957 dog bins. Again, the frequencies are different across the district based on the same variations that we've got with the litter bins. Although the removal of graffiti in itself might not be as applicable to tonight's meeting, it's in conjunction with fly posting, which we see more so now than what I remember previously. So that is quite an active part of the role in the core service of street cleansing. And obviously, just to touch on the point that we work in partnership, obviously, with parish councils, ECC highways, national highways, and the voluntary groups around the district. And where possible, we try to work in partnership as best we can to do what we have to keep the litter free within the district.
And just adding on to that as well, we actually we're the support for campaigns. So we do the setup and we do the monitoring for all the campaigns that comms and marketing put together. I note on the terms of reference there was some comments around some of the other projects that we've worked on, such as the new litter bins and litter signage that we've got around the district. When we done the trial on the litter signage, we did some monitoring at the time of the trial, and it was found that there was a 28% less litter on the ground when we put these signs up. We haven't done any more monitoring since the trial, and these signs have been implemented. We move them around the district, so it's not static in one place, so we can try and get impact wherever it goes. And then moving on to the bins, we are monitoring the bins quite regularly. We found that there was when we put the new bins in on the A12 and the A120, we got a lot of feedback about how bright and yellow they were, but we found that there was a reduction we had around 15% of litter, of the total litter on the ground in lay-bys where the bins were. When we put these in, that reduced down to 7 or 8%, and we actually saw an increase in the litter we're collecting there now as well. So people are obviously using the bins, so you know, on a weekly, so we do a monitor once a month, and it's an average of it was before the bins went in, we were collecting around 250 kilos of litter from our lay-bys on one route. And then after the bins went in, we started collecting another 60 kilos a week, so quite a bit. I have to say, I'm a little bit reserved about bins because I think bins encourage people, you know, to bring litter out and leave it there, and so I've got my own personal reservations around that. And then, you know, we've done some work with other authorities who, and interestingly, I think Colchester have got one extra lay-by than us on the A12, for instance, but they've only got 6 bins where we've got 49 bins along the A12. So it just goes to show the difference. And yes, the demographics of the different locations may be a reason for that, because obviously, you know, we've got quite an industrial area, particularly around Witham, you know, so compared to probably a little bit more rural when you're getting up to Colchester. So I just wanted to just talk about those two. Moving on to partners, strategic lead really on campaigns that we deliver. We support that, as I said, by setting the campaigns up when they're about to start. We do the monitoring around that as well. We also partner with National Highways and Essex County Council with services that we've currently got. There is also the Clean Essex Working Group. I don't know if members have heard of this, but it's definitely a group where we've got all the Essex authorities that participate, and we get good feedback come back from there that forms part of the some of the campaigns that we deliver across Essex. So we partner with that. Volunteers, and I couldn't praise the volunteers enough, especially the Green Heart champions, the In Bloom organisations. 2 years ago, we had around 260 Green Heart champions. Today, we've got 486, which is fantastic, because without those volunteers helping keeping the district clean and green, I think, you know, it would be so much harder for us. We partner with parish and town councils and other Essex authorities in doing programmes such as with parish councils and town councils about when they programme in litter picks that they do locally. We provide, as Mr. Wrench said, we provide equipment. We'll pick up the litter where there's organised litter picks going on, for instance. And also with housing associations, we partner with Eastlight on a number of occasions, particularly around the Great British Spring Clean, with Keep Britain Tidy. We've been partnered with them, and they've started to move a little bit with that as well. And last of all, I mean, we have got the schools as well as part of the voluntary groups, but we have, or community groups, shall I say, but we have the residents associations, the Templars, the Humber Road, and we've got the Friends of groups, like House of Public Gardens, and we've got Bradford Meadows, Buck and Blackwater, and so on. Like, so if we get asked to come in and look at a scheme with them, then we'll come in and help and support them. So opportunities we have for street cleansing. We continue our collaborative work with all our partners. It's definitely something that we want to promote. It's disappointing that we have to spend so much money, because although we've got 486 signed up, they're not always out there every week doing it, but we've got that amount out there helping and supporting the district as well. So we want to support that, and we do that by providing guidelines about what they can and can't do, and also equipment and bags and pickups. Contribute to the high-profile campaigns to deter littering. So that's obviously, as I said earlier, when we do have these campaigns, we're the ones, people on the ground, actually delivering the campaign and making sure that we're monitoring and checking that. Really important, maintaining a robust approach to investigating littering and other waste offences, because it seems that that's the only way we can stop people, particularly fly tippers, and with the cost of living going up now, there's risks of people doing that to reduce their costs as well. We've developed an A12 collaborative partnership with, there's two streams on that. I'm leading on the operational element, which is looking for the 4 other local authorities, so Brentwood, Chelmsford, Malden and Colchester, to join us with National Highways at looking at a more frequent clear up of the A12, because it's difficult to do it safely. We have to do it at night, so we need everyone on board. So we're looking at whether we can put some contributions together to look for maybe a private contractor to do it on a more frequent basis, so we're getting a better clean along the A12. So we're doing a lot of work around that at the moment, and we're hoping that we will start. We'll finalise the tender before Christmas, and then after Christmas it will go out and so something ready for the next financial year. Considering greater use of digital technology, CCTV, we've looked at litter cam at the moment. Litter cam, for those who don't know, is a camera, a static camera that can pick up the smallest piece of waste being thrown out of a vehicle. It was trialled in Maidstone a little while back. It's questionable whether it just moves the litter up further along the highway, if you like. That seems to be the issue. We've always used CCTV. We have good relationships with a lot of the parish councils who have purchased their own cameras that we manage for them. And obviously there's been a tightening up on RIPA legislation as well around how we, when we can and can't put cameras up. So it has sort of reduced the amount of cameras that we can put up until we can get approvals to put them up and show that there's a consistent problem going on in these locations. We are going to review the dog and the litter and dog bin routes in 2024, and that sounds a long way off, but we have a lot. We want to see whether there's opportunities to reduce the frequency, maybe by putting bigger bins in, or looking at, there's a lot of bins that are very close together as well on litter bins, because it would be useful to have a standard. At the moment, we get requests come in and we review that, and we, as Levi said earlier, get some feedback from other authorities, what they're working on, and to seek and develop collaborative arrangements with neighbouring councils as well as cross-border working. So we had a huge fly tip that was on the boundary of Uttlesford a little while back, and Uttlesford came in. It was on our side of the boundary, but they came in and helped clear that up as well, and we try to support each other with that, working there. And the final slide for me really is around the challenges we have. And I put this one in because there is a cultural issue. There is a throwaway society that we have, and we do need to continue to educate. And I think Councillor Abbott mentioned earlier when Mr. Wrench was here about the young people, and it's absolutely spot on. And it's so refreshing to hear what they're doing at Great Barfield. And we're just, we're trying to encourage that by our recycling team going out and doing educational visits as well. Levi's been out there with the Cabinet Member for Environment to do some talks as well about litter education. The cost of living I mentioned earlier, that is impacting on us, and it'll be impacting on residents as well in terms of what the cost of everything is that's going up, and it is all going up. So you all know about that, and obviously meeting the expectations of our customers, which is a real, this is what we've got, and there's a lot of requests that we get come in to, and we haven't got any more resources, so we have to try and manage our teams around the priorities to clear up. And the last one I put there is district growth, because I'm sure you'll all be aware of the amount of growth we've got going on at the moment. There's a new estate on the Whittam Road going out to Whittam. There's another one on the Silver End Road coming out of Silver End heading towards Rivenhall. There's some up in Housestead around Oak Road. There's a lot of development going on, and we're not getting any funding ourselves when with all this growth that's going on. So it's stretching us as well in terms of where the new places are. And that really, that's us. So, thank you.
Well, thank you very much indeed. I mean, we love to have these because we can refer to these afterwards, but also for the time coming this evening. Very, very grateful to you both, and a lot of information there for us. So I'll throw it open. I'll go to members first. I've got a few questions. Councillor Courtauld.
Thank you. Thank you for a great talk. It was very, very interesting. I was just thinking about the way the A12, for instance, is horrible and caked in litter. Partly, I assume, because people think it's not their patch. They're just passing through, so it's someone else's problem. And is that? I mean, what can we do about that? Because presumably, my ward has got lots of tiny little lanes, and now the verges are only being cut once a year. It does feel like the countryside driving through it, and there's quite a lot of littering in the sense that people, I don't know, doing up their garage or something, and they come into the countryside and dump it in a gateway. But compared to something like the A120 or something where you see people just tossing out their stuff as they're zooming along, it seems to me that when people think that they're just passing through, they don't think it's not their problem, it's not their litter. So is there something we can do to make people feel that they're contaminating someone's environment? I mean, it seems very hard to. I can't see when you're travelling 60 miles an hour or 40 miles an hour down a road to somewhere 45 minutes away that it's really going to bother you. Is the awful truth. I mean, it would if you care about litter, you won't do it, and if you think, gosh, I don't want this in my car anymore, how do we change that, or can we change it?
Yes, it's very difficult, particularly the slip roads that come off of these main strategic networks. They are really difficult to litter pick as well, because we're governed by street works, and for fast roads we have to have traffic management in place. We're finding that we can't get applications for traffic management until during the night, because that's the safest time to do it. We've tried to work with National Highways contractors and see if we can borrow their traffic management when they're working on the highway. So it's a challenge for us. That's going to say prevent littering. So it's becoming a challenge. But what we're trying to do with this collaborative partnership, where we brought National Highways in as well, is try and get more support from them when we work with the other Essex authorities as well to do the A12, because we're trying to get their buy-in to it as well. So because they need to take some responsibility on that. It also is difficult when you've got schemes going on. And I don't know if you're aware, but there's a new scheme from Marks Tay to Stanway, and you're not able to book traffic management 5 kilometres either side of where any scheme is that National Highways are doing. So then you can't get on the strategic network, in between those areas. So it is problematic, and we try our best. I mean, we have an A road litter team that will litter pick along the A12 where it's safe to do so. But as you know, there's stretches there that are very narrow in its verge, very difficult to get on. So we have to work quite hard to then book in the traffic management. And unfortunately, and I say unfortunately because what takes a precedence is the maintenance work. So if we've got something pre-booked and then there's some urgent maintenance work required, then our traffic management will get cancelled, and then we have to rebook it. So there are some challenges that we have to face. So we are trying to work closely with National Highways. They're quite a difficult organisation to work with, and we're trying. But we've been getting great support from them more recently. I know that they've provided some feedback to some questions that were raised by the committee, and we've got that back.
Yeah, if I may just expand just a little bit on in terms of your question. I think part of the problem might have been the fact that litter bins are not always in sight, or people are not always being able to see them. So I think the initiative to go with a bigger, brighter bin was part of that initiative to try and encourage people. Now they can see what they've got access to then try and encourage the use of those. Obviously, Steve covered off in terms of the weights that we'd seen during the trial period. Obviously, the increase of the weight that we'd seen in those bins and the decrease in litter that we'd seen on the ground is probably an aspect of us achieving part of that goal. Secondly, with the collaborative work that we are doing on the A12 with the other authorities, probably gives us an opportunity to align our messages in terms of comms and marketing as well, so that if we're hitting the same project, working together in the same way, and we're releasing the same messages, the education to then people that are predominantly using the roads as pass-through networks are more likely to take notice. And that's my opinion based on conversations that we are having as well. So hopefully that just elaborates a little bit.
Councillor Abbott, know that we've had a few issues around the slip roads in between North Whittam and Rivenall, and it is a challenge to get on them bits of road to clear, because it's quite dangerous there, and you've got to do it when we've got to shut the slip road down, for instance, and we have to, there's at least a 12-week wait to do that. So that's some of the challenges that we have.
Okay, Councillor Abbott.
Yeah, thank you. Introduces nicely what I was going to talk about. Members probably know, but if they don't, myself and Councillor Wright have got the mixed blessing of having both sections of the A12 and the A120 in our ward, and absolutely on the A12. So Mr. Alsop, the route manager, I was part of instigating this because I met him on the A12 a couple of months ago to talk about various issues. It was very refreshing to have someone face-to-face to talk to, because National Highways, same experience as a councillor, getting anything out of them is difficult. I can't say we've made a huge amount of outreach, so that's all good. But on that first answer, he said, yes, there is a weekly inspection, and this is really the A12 I'm talking about now, and we assess for litter grading A to D. The results are then collected and passed on to the appropriate authority, which, having read their bump, I now understand better about the division of labour between National Highways and what the local authorities. It's quite complicated as to which road. I knew the A12 was BDC, but nationally it's quite interesting. So, a very specific question. Did National Highways ever contact BDC about the state of the A12 around those slip roads at Whittam North? And did National Highways ever contact BDC about the state of the Kelvedon bypass, the section that's within Braintree District?
I have asked Mr. Alsop who he's been contacting in Braintree District Council. His response was that Braintree District Council was one of the better areas along the A12 than in other areas, other local authorities. As I say, we're working with them. We're working closer with them now. I've asked for the reports to be sent direct to me going forward, and hopefully we can see that. I mean, the guidelines that he's talked about, I'm sure you know about the grading. Yeah, so I don't need to talk about the grading, but I'm hoping then, where we're working closer together, we're going to get these reports earlier. I personally can't say that I've seen a report from National Highways, but that's been one of the problems, because I have raised that question with Mr. Alsop to say where is it being sent to, because I've not seen them.
Yeah, so Thank you. If I can just ask
carry on.
a couple more questions. So that confirmed what I thought. So the collaboration, which is mentioned in your report and also in his, is great, and hopefully that will build. But I didn't recognise what he said there, to be honest. Through the Whittam's Kelvin section, through Rivenhall End, I've also questioned him, just as a matter of information, about why nearly 30 streetlights have been on during the day for 3 years, about why there are colossal potholes, which any inspection whose eyesight's anything even slightly worse than mine could pick up. And they say, oh no, we weekly inspect. So I don't know what this weekly inspection involves, but your answer is very helpful in gelling that. Going on to the more local stuff, for the barrow beats, when they do the litter picking, does that include at this time of year leaf clearing, which can often get mixed up? And when the litter bins are emptied, where does that material go? Does it go to Ipswich for sorting, so some of it gets recycled?
So your first question around what the barrow beats do. The barrow beats are mainly in the town centre, so that they're emptying the bins. If there's any leaf fall around there, we would send a sweeper in, and we would sweep around the town centres. The litter picking teams are the ones that go out and do the bins in parishes, in the main parish areas, and they would. And we've got the parish sweeper, of course, that would do that. So Roger, that works over at Housestead, he's a fantastic member of our team, and we've got some other quite experienced people that are working in Whittam as well, and in Braintree. The second question, just remind me what that was. Sorry.
So you've got over 1,000 litter bins.
Yeah.
Basically, where does that go? Does it go to Ipswich,
so
the MRF?
I think the problem we have is this contamination. I can't recycle because there's a lot of the litter bins, when we pick them up, haven't just got litter in. There's a lot of other things that are in there. If someone puts some dog waste in there, it's contaminated. If someone puts a bottle in there, it's contaminated. If someone, so that's the issue that I have. I can't send it onto a recycling centre because it's been contaminated, and that's what we're faced with. We can't then, we would need our own MRF to actually go through all of the bins to resort it, if you like, and we just haven't got the capacity to do that. So it goes to landfill.
That's what I was afraid you'd say, but that then links back to, I've got one more question,
Yes,
if I may.
carry on.
That then links back to what Mr. Wrench was talking about he was keen to get bins where we do recycle. And I know some areas have these where there's specific bins, put your can in here or put your plastic bottle in here. So maybe that's something we want to look at.
April in Derbyshire have them in their high street.
Maybe that's something we want to look at in terms of recommendation. Last two things. One, a comment. Totally agree about the Green Heart and the volunteers. I was talking this afternoon to, you may know her, a lady from Silver End, who is incredible. She walks all the roads, including the one past legislation, where they will fix things to street lamp columns, which actually can be a safety issue because there's a lot of them through operations. Have you got any insight into what we might be able to do about it? Because my understanding is only a very few of those developers' signs are authorised by Essex County Council, which is the highway authority. Mr. Alsop told me they never authorise them on the A12, or hardly ever, and yet they even do it down the A12. We've got them in Silver End Conservation Area, not just directional signs, but actually advertising events. Now, obviously, the corollary of this is if all local businesses decided to use street lamp columns or other highway furniture to advertise, you know what this area would look like. So is that an area we could do more on through operations, and what's your insight into what currently happens?
We generally will take down anything that's been posted. We get the usual ones, the circuses and events, that normally come up. We get feedback from members as well, telling us where some fly posting is, and we'll go out and remove it. The enforcement lays with planning enforcement, so they're the ones that enforce under that legislation, which is the Planning Act, if I remember correctly. So the town plan, whichever act it is now. So they're the ones that normally deal with that. But we're proactive in trying to take them down as they pop up. Like we always keep them because if we get inquiries from whoever's put them up, we don't throw them away. We'll keep them for a period of time so they can claim them back, and then we'll talk to them about it. But it really the enforcement lays with planning enforcement, I'm afraid. So.
Are you saying an inquiry would have to go to planning enforcement first and then to you? Is that what you're saying? Because I'm genuinely confused about this as to what the correct way of reporting this is. I mean, I'm in no doubt, legally, having looked into it for many years, including my 8 years as a county councillor, that it is fly posting and it comes under that legislation. So how do we as members or members of the public report it to BDC to action it? Do we go down the planning enforcement route, or do we come straight to operations?
Well, I mean, members of the public would go through the customer service and they would redirect it to planning enforcement and us at the same time. We would liaise internally how we were going to clear if there's a need to take someone down. The bigger signs that you may be talking about will definitely be planning enforcement. Yeah, well, even those sort of signs. I mean, I know, I think we spoke earlier the week in terms of it is really with the planning team that the enforcement side, all the applications to put advertising up is with.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Mrs Powell.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Can I just ask about graffiti? We see graffiti a lot, and I know that you've attempted to all over everything, and it's costing you money to get rid of it, but what are we doing about catching these people to do it?
Graffiti. We had a problem around Braintree because there is someone out there that's putting tags up and everything, and then I think a lot of the furniture is privately owned furniture that we're not allowed to touch. So you might have bus stops, for instance, you might have BT boxes, it's that kind of stuff, and it's really down to them, and we contact them to try and get them to remove it. It is an ongoing problem. I don't know how we capture them, other than if there's a persistent area that it keeps happening and we repaint it and it keeps happening, we could probably put cameras up, but identifying the perpetrator that proves difficult as well, because you might have someone on camera, they might be hooded, and you just can't see who it is, and it's so difficult to. And I absolutely agree with your frustration, Councillor Bell, and it's so difficult to actually catch these people doing these things, and we need the support of residents. We need some intel in terms of who it might be to actually be able to pursue anything. But it's a problem.
Maybe that's something we need to add into the education again and get it when it's...
Certainly.
Because presumably it's young people doing it.
We can't make those assumptions.
No, we can't, but...
But yes, it possibly, yes.
Possibly is, yeah. Sorry, did you have your hand up, Councillor Hensman? No?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chairman. Thinking of partnership, especially on graffiti, there is the what they now call POP, which is people on probation. And the probation service have always come to, certainly my charity, to go out and get it, clean up kits to go out and get rid of graffiti, whether it's on building, whether it's on the BT boxes or the payphones and so on. So whether there's an opportunity for a partnership with probation to be able to be directed by operations to wherever they need to go.
I think that's probably a topic for another occasion, isn't it? I think we need to try and stick to litter tonight. We can't
but they look to pick as well.
Right,
so
okay.
They do. there's a lot of things that they can do, and that's the education side of it. So they do either great litter picking and removing graffiti and these sort of things. So I'm wondering if there is the opportunity within the terms to partner with the probation service. Certainly High Sheriff has gone and rekindled the connections, so I can hopefully get some sort of contact there.
Chairman, it may be that one of the recommendations that the committee considers is because obviously what we've had today is evidence of how we do work with partners. But I think what the conversation around the table with members is that actually there's probably more partners out there that we as an authority maybe should engage in with. So, so particularly around like the flood, I've just looked at the council's website to see how we do deal with those reporting, to see if there's a deficiency in how we notify the public, etc. And obviously it talks in terms of our responsibilities and what we do, but again it doesn't then talk about how we will work with other partners to deal with matters which are outside of our jurisdiction, to use that phrase. So I think what you're building a picture of is that where we have partnerships, we have degrees of success depending on who they are. I'm going to call the organisation incorrectly. I know National Highway. So is that the right term? There's a bit. We're getting a message on one side that says, "Oh, we're very positive, engaged with you." Our experience is not necessarily meeting that assertion. There's concerns that have been raised by Councillor Abbott with, his inquiry to establish is what we're saying being told, or is that an aspiration of the gentleman, Mr. Alsop, that you've met to be working more proactively and, but it's aspirational is one thing. So it may be that one of the recommendations that you put forward is that we look to different types of partners to actually go outside the traditional selection of campaigning bodies to work with. That's what seems to be.
That National Highways is formerly Highways England had with them, which is a good thing. And just on Councillor Hensman, I have contacted the probation service to look at whether we could use community service, for instance, as a way of also helping with things like repainting or that as well. But unfortunately, I've not had no response from that particular service, But we have tried to investigate. There's opportunities where there's some community payback that we can put back into all of our communities, but.
Because I do get that has changed from what I got back from the High Sheriff, so he is actively finding out who's now taking it on, and if I get that, I can take that offline perhaps. A couple of other points, if I may, please.
Yeah, carry
on. The yellow, they're not quite yellow because somebody got pulled down on those bins, but they are very striking, and you know where they are. Now, I do find as I walk most places. And if I see litter, I pick it up. I'm then walking hundreds of yards looking for a bin to put it in, and I don't pass any. And I think it's no wonder. I think, to heck with it, I've picked this, I'm just going to chuck it down. No. But I feel that's the sort of attitude that people are going to get where there aren't any bins. But if they're in your face and there's enough of them, I get the barrow beats are going to end up with increased footfall, but it's better to empty a bin than it is to have to litter pick individual items. And you've now got that electric, what I would call a poover, that I think that is absolutely fantastic. He's wandering around with his big hose, and if we can get a couple and so on, so it falls to the likes of Braintree, East Manor Community and groups like that, Blocking Blackwater, Friends of groups and so on. And it's, we certainly, when we do our litter picking, we do segregate it and we do recycle it via the DMR that I've got. And it's about trying to stop the landfill as well of any litter that's picked up. So Going back on the segregated bins, you've got, like, Chelmsford has certainly got them. They've got 4. I think it's glass, plastic, cans, paper, and then anything else that can't be. So all 4 are together. Because the ones we've got, like there's one opposite here, it's newspapers in one hole, cans in the other, but it's one sack. It all ends up in the same thing, and I think they are abused. But the Chelmsford ones certainly look more encouraging because they've got the smaller apertures, which means that you actually actively put in what's required, and hopefully it reduces down any contamination. But I do also get, like, with the dog waste that goes into we allow them in our district bins, but parishes don't. So some people are saying, but you can't put it in. Yeah, you can in the district bins, but you can't put it in the parish bins. So there's a lot of different rules depending on where you are. It's like a postcode lottery, if you like. So therefore, littering and what you do with it. But I'd rather it went into any receptacle than it's dropped.
Okay, thank you. Sorry,
yeah, I mean, Chelmsford have got their own MRF facilities. We've got a number of locations where we do allow that. We offer schools. I think there's discounts on their recycling. If they put up, we do allow that. We offer schools. I think there's discipline that they can recycle stuff in there. So there are things that are going on out and send it that way. And that's why, but I mean, out and send it that way. I've wanted to achieve that we could recycle some of that litter. If it was purely litter, great. Because we could do that, but that's what the problem is. It's the contamination element that goes in there.
Yeah, I was just going to add, if I may, just like you just said, Steve, it's the financial aspect that impacts us directly by, firstly, segregating and hauling to the DMR MRF, but then for it to be reprocessed and hauled back to landfill, it becomes a secondary impact cost, which financially is not viable, unfortunately.
Thank you. A question?
Sorry, one more if I may. When I went down the A12 recently, and I actually saw a neighbour.
A12, where it's safe to do so, as I said before, but some of the verges are very tight. You can't get a vehicle there. They'll be sitting out on the road. You just can't do it. You just can't. And if you look at the slip roads, they're single carriageway. A lot of the slip roads going off. You can't, and it's quite unsafe. I understand what you're saying. I mean, we have had, I have seen it myself and other authorities that they're doing that. That they would get pulled up by national highways because that's going against their conditions.
Okay, I've got a couple. Actually, Councillor Abbott has not pinched mine, but I had some round. Again, the response from Mr. Alsop, I was going to question how realistic was the weekly inspection. So thank you. That's been answered. Just a bit more on the A12. This group that you're working with, the other authorities, local authorities and national highways, it hasn't been running very long, I don't think, has it?
No, it hasn't. It's in its infancy, but I've certainly I've had a subgroup meeting with the operational leads from each of the other authorities, and we're working up on a specification to go out to tender to see what the take-up would be. We're looking. It's quite a in-depth specification that will be that we're asking the contractor or someone to provide, and with support of national highways, obviously for those people to get on the road and actually do the little bits, because with that, and that's why we're involving them in there to make sure that we get their backing and support when we do that. So the group has been in its infancy. I think it's run every quarter as a main group, and then at the moment subgroups I think are meeting monthly. And my colleague Samir Panduit's running the policy side of the group, so and looking at the finances that might be available from other local authorities to support the project overall. But well, first of all, we've got to find out what that cost is.
Would you think that the most, or the easiest way, most sensible way, is to shut down for 2 nights and every, not just litter picking, but gully cleaning, all the various, because they do that in the south of the county. I think that's probably an Essex Highways A127. That's how they do. They have all the various contractors go in. There's weed control, there's litter picking, there's verge cutting, gully clearing, and it's done, I think, twice a year. They close one lane one night, and then the other 2 lanes the next night. And obviously a lot of traffic management involved, but would that be the best way to do the A12?
Well, we have to do it overnight anyway, so that's what happens. So we have to book the traffic management in. I have tried. I think there's only been one occasion, which was on the south side of the A12 from the Kelvedon turn off down to the North Whitton turn. I think we managed to piggyback on the back of National Highways contractor. But as National Highways have said to me, it's down to the contractor. And I've said to National Highways, I'm prepared to do the training that the contractor wants us to do so we can get on to, because obviously it's much cheaper for us as a district council to get onto someone else's traffic management. And also it doesn't hold up any litter picks that are organised then. Whereas traditionally when we're booking in traffic management, the application has to go through to National Highways to approve, and that's the lead time that we're always faced with. We've been more lucky on the 120, on the A120. We seem to get better coverage on that. We've just recently done our normal autumn litter pick along the A120, and normally we do from Marks Farm up to the Felsford turn off. So going through Gay's Corner as well, and we clear all the way down there on both sides. We do 3 of those a year, and they cost quite a bit of money to do, and they're always overnight. There's 2 weekends every 3 times a year that we. So every time we do that clear, it takes 2 weekends to do it in. So that's what we can get for the 120. It's a little bit more difficult from the Marks Farm up to Marks Tay, because it's a lot of places it's single carriageway. I did at the beginning of the year do a sweep on Channel 1 on both sides of the road, and I know that I've had some local residents in Coggeshall in particular asking for some further help and support along that road, because on particularly where the central reservations are as well. So we do quite a bit of work along the 120 successfully, I think, but the A12 has always been quite a difficult one, because, as I said earlier, the National Highways have got to sort them sort of things out first, because there's a safety issue. So that's why they do that. But yeah, I mean, that's what I've been trying for, quite some time to get a better relation. We did have a committee that was working with us. It was funded by DEFRA. It was the rural. It's finished now. It was a couple of years back they managed to get National Highways there. And I also attended a couple of years back National Highways' previous supplier, which was Kia. Yeah, Kia. They used to do all the maintenance at one time for National Highways as well, to try, and there was a big drive on litter picking along there. They litter pick the M11 they picked some of the, you know, the main motorways, but, you know, so we're also talking to them about whether, and we are going to, at some point, look for member support to go back to maybe DEFRA.
And again, can I ask if there's anything that comes to mind after? We can perhaps pop it in an email and have a response that way. That's super. Thank you again very much indeed. You know you're more than welcome to stay, but quite understand you want to get off. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you.
I'll just let the gentleman leave. Thank you very much. Bye-bye. So that was our last evidence gathering session. We have got a questionnaire has gone out to parish councils, and did you send that all across? Just sent it this evening? No. No.
I sent the responses to members this evening.
The responses,
and
yeah.
that's part of the table of papers.
Yeah, and that is open until the 2nd of December. And I think the plan is once we have that back, that will be shared with you all. We have another meeting the next meeting is early February, where we need to be looking at, we'll need to come up with a draft report and recommendations. I think the plan is that we have an informal meeting that isn't webcast, so that we can, and I think Emma's going to look at perhaps putting in another one.
Yes, just conscious of the time between now and next meeting. Obviously, we're having the Christmas period in between. That just changes things a bit. But what we'll look at is a timetable of meetings for members to see if we can put in another meeting where members can have a review of their report. We finish our evidence gathering, but obviously there's still always some questions that arise out of these sessions. So it's just to make sure that we've got enough time to put out any inquiries that we may have following like this evening's meeting, to get those responses and maybe have another meeting just so as a committee you come together and formally discuss those. And then it's about looking at pulling reports out. I will have a look at the time. If a date doesn't work, then I'd be grateful if members can come back to me as soon as possible so we can look to rearrange it. And obviously I'm mindful that come January, members have got a very busy timetable for process and the various activities that we system. So I won't try to overwhelm you, but we'll try and accommodate where we can. So I think if you can plan for an additional meeting to look at the final pieces of evidence that come in, because I think February's a little bit too late to leave that. So if members can leave that for me to come back to you, I'd be grateful.
Okay, thank you. And I think if anybody has missed any of the meetings where we have had evidence gathering, if I can perhaps invite you to just to look at it on the YouTube channel. It's very helpful. I mean, I shall go back through them because obviously it's some weeks ago since we had the first one. And if there are any recommendations that are there ready, waiting now, please, I think, email Emma and we can put that within. I mean, I've started the draft. I started the draft before Jess left, just so she guided me in the right way. So there's a bit more to be done on that. Obviously, well, a lot more to be done on that. But recommendations are ready. Please send them in. And I think that's probably all for tonight. I'm aware that... Sorry, Councillor Abbott.
Yes, just 2 points. So the parish responses, that's an interim list, is it? And there might be some more.
It is, yes. We just wanted you to see what we'd already received, because just sort of conscious that we had this meeting, and we just wanted to see that Colin will pull together the final list for you so you can see the responses that we have received. But it did go out to all.
It was all. I was
It
going to
was
check
all,
with that.
All parishes.
all 10
Right,
parishes.
thank you
So
very much.
if your parishes haven't responded, and please chill it up, because I think obviously it helps you to have further evidence about how we work with them in partnership,
Yes.
where they have some issues or where they feel that, you know, things could be improved. Because at the end of the day, your recommendations are to the organisation where they're, you know, through your examination, you feel things could be strengthened. You had a lot of information where, you know, where you've had references to resources, costs, etc., piggybacking. So just having a look at the terms. You may wish to go over your terms of reference, and if you feel there's not had sufficient evidence to address a particular point, I'd be grateful if you can highlight that, because it may be that we look at the timetable and see how else we can get that information for you and get that shared. I think you've covered quite a few of your terms of reference that were agreed. Councillor Abbott, the point that you've made around sort of the reporting functions and the legal framework, that's a point I'm going to.
Between two stalls, but I can't seem to get a clear answer.
No.
My belief is that these signs are fire posting, and that therefore they should be reported to operations, because we don't report circus signs that have been up for a year to planning enforcement.
No.
So some clarity around that would be really welcome.
And that may be a natural recommendation that we make through the process, is that, you know, I think that's a point that we can have a look at in terms of the law, and then maybe sort of one recommendations that you do think of.
I'll send you the photograph that I sent to officers, which demonstrates the point in Silver End.
No, that's it, because obviously one of your terms of reference was you did have reference to unauthorised advertising along trunk roads, etc., which you've had an explanation from Steve Wilson this evening. But obviously, if we do have an issue with council's processes, then that's obviously one of the recommendations is to review is that, you know, we need to be more clear how these things are reported. One still along with the explanation that's been given with Steve Wilson. So, if you wouldn't mind, Councillor Abbott, just sending that over, then that's something that I'll explore for the committee, and then hopefully give you an answer to that as a byproduct as well.
Sorry, Emma, can I just, while I think about it, I wonder if Corinne perhaps could send out a polite email reminder to the parish council.
Absolutely.
Because I think I haven't printed it off. I think, have we had 4 responses or 5? No more than 5, have we?
I think it's 5 responses, but no, we will send a reminder. That's no problem at all.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Whilst we don't like to badger parishes,
no, but
it's a
sometimes
valuable opportunity for them to feed into the process as well.
Yeah.
So it's obviously do accept those areas which are not parish. We don't have this, but this is about how we work with our partners, and there may be through some of the response we get from the partners we actually learn about other people that they work with, and maybe we don't work directly with. So it's whether we've
useful
the recommendations about enabling others. Other scrutiny reviews have looked at how the council can look at resources that enable others to be part of that partnership that deals with a particular issue. So, but if members could have a look at the terms of reference, reflect upon what they've heard, and if they really feel that there's something that we really haven't had a good look at, then let me know, and we'll see if we can set something down as soon as possible to get that looked into.
Super. Okay.
So, okay.
Thank you, Emma. So nobody got any further questions tonight? No. Okay, so we'll move on to agenda item 6, urgent business. We've got not aware of any urgent business for this evening's meeting, so I will close the meeting at 9 o'clock. And thank you all for your attendance this evening, and to those who are watching on the council's YouTube channel. Thank you. Good night.
Matt, have we terminated? No, thank you.